All right. Well, guys, welcome. I think we have to start. Let's give 10 seconds to this song.
Did you share your screen? When you're ready. Okay.
People can dance if they want to. They don't have to, but it might help if you do a little bit. Come on, Bill. Let's see what you got. So, guys, if you missed my promo, that was what I was doing. I'm talking about medical billing today, and so the whole premise is that I'm bringing sexy back, and which is obviously a joke because I don't think we ever look at like medical billing as a sexy topic or a fun topic or an engaging topic. I know when I was a practice owner, if someone would bring it up, typically I would just gloss over. And so little background on me, for those of you who don't know me, this is a super quick like update because I really want to get into serving you. For those of you who don't know me, Will Humphries, I'm in Arizona. I own a company called In the Black Billing, but my life in physical therapy started when I was 17. When I was 17 years old, I got introduced to physical therapy. I was going to be an engineer, but I was trying to impress a girl I was dating at the time, so I took her mountain climbing. And I didn't use any ropes. And I fell 50 feet, 5 stories of a building, a free fall, breaking over 20 bones in my body. I broke both arms and both legs, multiple places. And so the world was really hard at the time, but my physical therapist, my home health therapist, she showed up at my door and she just saw the world differently than all the other healthcare professionals I had talked to, and quite literally like woke me up to the idea of being able to serve people in that way. And so fast forward, I went to PT school. I was suspended. Little interesting fact, we'll do another seminar on this another time. But I was suspended from physical therapy school for suspected terrorist activity during 9/11. I was investigated by the FBI, a whole bunch of other people. And it ultimately was a great experience, even though it was super hard at the time, because I learned who your friends are and how to take a stand for what you love. The school, during the year of suspension I was in, tried me, and I got to see how people in my faculty would see the world a little bit differently and would take a stand for me. So moving forward, I became a physical therapist. I started my practice in 2003. I have a partner, Nathan Shields, who's one of the personalities that we're going to be blessed to hear from at some point. And so I started a practice, and what I quickly learned is that I didn't know how to run the business side of my practice. I built something, and it wasn't until I opened up a few other locations that it became really evident to me that I didn't know what I was doing around business. And so I ultimately almost drowned. It created all sorts of health issues for me. I was told I needed a pacemaker at one point because the stress was overwhelming. Ultimately, I got help. I started looking for different consultant groups, different opportunities. I'm very proud to tell you that HODS is a part of that story and part of the reason I'm sitting in the chair today. But ultimately what I had learned was how to control my business and how to run my business and run it profitably. So from that point, I grew the business with Nathan. He expanded our HODS business in Alaska together. He'll tell you more about that. And I ran the Arizona business, the 4 locations, and we ultimately decided that Nathan and I decided we were called to do other things in the industry. So we merged our company with 4 other practices in Arizona, and we sold. And so I stayed on for a year as the VP of recruiting and marketing. And what I can tell you is that when I merged my company wasn't the biggest. It wasn't the second biggest. It was the 3rd biggest company out of the 5. But we got paid the most because of our net margin. And what I'm going to share with you today is going to hopefully impact your net margin as well, because that is the mission that I have taken on since. When I tell my PT friends, they thought for sure when I sold, I was going to go into recruiting or marketing or some business like that. And so they were confused. Why would I start a medical billing business, right? And what I tell them is, to me, it just makes sense. Did you see what I did there? It just makes sense, because for me, it's really important to serve people where our biggest blind spot is in our industry. Truly, it's the most complicated, the most confusing piece of it. And I am not here to sell you onto my company. As a matter of fact, we can't even take new clients until October because we've grown. I'm here to help you make your existing solutions successful and I'm going to offer you some tools and tips that are going to help you get through it. But before we do all that, now that we've got a few more people in the room, if it aligns for you guys, I would love, just for the beginning, if you guys could turn on your cameras for just a minute. I'm going to do a survey, a hand-raising survey. So I'd like for you, if you're in the middle of trying to listen to this and multitask to something else, if you could be present just for a second and turn on your camera just for a second. You don't need to turn on your microphone. We're going to do a little bit of a poll here. Thank you, James. Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. All right, so here we go. For those of you who are joining, if you want to turn on your cameras just for this first little bit, it would be great. So I want you to raise your hands if you are a HODS partner. If you're an existing HODS partner, okay? Raise your hand if you direct or own a practice. Okay? Raise your hand. Now we're gonna get a little bit more personal. Raise your hand if you have children. Okay? I'm just curious. Raise your hand if you have more than 2 children. More than 3? Man, I was hoping Nathan would be here. He would have won. He has 7 kids. So you'll get to hear from him next week. Ask him how he got there. He'll tell you all about it. Okay, now raise your hand if you've been to more than 2 countries. Okay, 3. Okay, let's skip forward. Raise your hand if you've been to more than 6 countries. More than 8? More than 12? Okay, more than 20 countries? Okay, I don't know who won. More than 16? Okay, so love it. Okay, we're almost wrapping this thing up here. Raise your hand if you got into physical therapy because you love working and serving people, in part. Good. Raise your hand if you got into leadership or ownership because you want to increase your impact and your freedom as an individual. Okay. So I just wanted to get the group a little bit more before we started diving into things, because ultimately the thing that I want you to walk away with is that everyone in this lobby is 100% aligned. We are the same. We would have a harder time finding things that we don't agree on than agree on because of how we are here in this room right now. And so as we go through the presentation today, I want to do a couple things. First of all, acknowledge you. Everyone in this room is super busy. And Christina, you're welcome to turn off your camera if you need to start multitasking, because I know some of you need to multitask, and I want to thank you for that. And I would also ask you, as much as you're able to be present, to be present. Like, have you ever been on an airplane and like the lady at the front's telling you how to fasten the seatbelt and everyone's just kind of like watching and maybe on their phones and that kind of thing, and you hear it? I want you to understand, what would it be like if we were at the beginning of that flight and the lady said, hey, listen, I know with 100% certainty in an hour, our plane is going to crash. So now I'm going to give you the seatbelt instructions. How differently would we be present? As much as you can, I want you to be present here, because these lessons that I'm about to share with you almost killed me physically, almost sank my business 2 to 3 times. And they will be worth your attention. I don't show up unless I know it's going to create value for people. So guys, thank you again for being here. I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen, and we're going to go right into the 3 fatal flaws of managing a billing and collecting department. Just for a second, I'm going to plug in my headphones. I have 4 boys and we're homeschooling, so you never know. Can you hear me now? You can hear me now? Okay, great. I'm going to share my screen, and away we go. Okay, the 3 fatal flaws in managing and billing a collecting service. Again, CEO in the black. The number 1 flaw, we're getting right into it, guys. The number 1 flaw is feeling comfortable about your existing billing solution. Why is this the fatal flaw? Because none of us went to school to become a billing collecting expert. We rarely recognize that when we have a billing solution, if we have it in-house, that really is a separate business. It's a totally different business. And in some cases, it would even make sense to give it its own tax ID number and run it independently. Because most of the time what we do is we look at it like a service we're giving to our primary company. And yet none of us have ever been trained on how to run a billing company. And yet we do it all the time. So a lot of us do outsource, right? In my career, over the 15 years, I had 3 in-house and 3 outsourced solutions. These flaws and solutions I'm about to share with you are going to be applicable to any of it. Like, it doesn't matter if you have an in-house or an outsourced solution. The number one thing I've come to learn over the last 6 months is that most PTs fall into a trap when they start getting super comfortable with their billing. Oh, and I should just mention that at the end of the day, as I went through my journey, when we came to the realization of how to best serve physical therapists, we came to the conclusion that good really is the enemy of great. That's a quote from a book called Good to Great, the study of businesses that are the most successful and what drives them. And it's the understanding that you have to be great. So let's talk about it like this. How do you know if you're comfortable with your billing company in a way that's not serving you? Let's look at that first question there. Are you 100% confident you are collecting every dollar you have earned? Now, I'm not talking about like, yeah, I'm pretty sure. I'm talking, are you 100% confident? I want you to understand that there is no secret or magic algorithm to billing and collecting. The insurance companies make it complicated, but it's a very simple process when done correctly, and it can be communicated to the owner in a way to where you can understand. So people tell me all the time, they say, Will, how do I run a billing department when I'm so busy over running my actual practice? How do I know when my outsourced solution is doing their job? How do I know when my in-house team is doing everything that they should be doing? It's because you can know the 20% of the process of billing that will help you lead 100% of the business. You don't need to learn how to post a claim to understand if posting claims is being done correctly. You just need to know the 20% of the process that allows you to be powerful across the board. So as we see this and we recognize this, I want you to understand where people cut corners in billing and collecting. There's a lot of blind spots in our industry. The first, I want you to look to see if they are reconciling the deposits against the payments posted. All that means, for those who are, for many of you that might make total sense, for those of you who that's new, you just want to make sure the money that's hitting the bank account is the same dollars that are being posted in your EMR. It's not like you have to go through it manually yourself. You have to have a discussion with your biller and just ask if they're doing it, and have them give you examples of how they're reconciling the deposits against the payments being posted in the billing software. You want to make sure they're working denials. So in the last 6 months since we've done this, we don't have this vision of being the largest billing company in the world. Our vision is to serve a very select few of PTs who want to make a big impact in the world and go super deep. And every time they've come over from another company, we have learned that there has been elements of their denials that are being written off, like just being written off, and excuse the typo there. It's the worst case scenario. They are writing off those denials instead of fighting and really getting the dollars that you have earned. And another corner, this is an indication that they're cutting corners, is that they're saying everything is right on track. Between my experience of owning a clinic and running it at such a high level, that my biller ended up becoming the head biller for this new merged company. She ran the RCM for over 40 locations before leaving to focus with me on the small guy and girl. She and I have learned that there is never a time when everything is on track. Like, I don't mean that in a way of being negative. I mean that like the healthcare systems provide opportunities to where we are constantly fighting something, and we have to be able to verbally illustrate that to you. And if people are saying, no, everything's fine, you're doing great, you're collecting about this much % per visit, don't worry about it, be assured that there's something more they could be doing. So the best case scenario of what I've noticed, we do what's called a profitability breakthrough audit. And we do this as a service. Of course, if anyone wants to join our company, we do this because we want to help them see where we could help them. but we have done this 20 times for companies that have no interest in joining our billing company, just so we can verify what their billing company is doing. And what I would tell you is there's a number of decent solutions out there, truly, but we're talking about good and great. In the very smallest case I've found is that there was a minimum of $10,000 in profit that was sitting in their company right then that we could easily go get in a matter of weeks. So the difference between good and great is very significant. Worst case scenario when people are cutting corners is the article you see on the right. This came out just 2 days ago. A Mesa woman in Arizona got prison term for stealing insurance company checks. What she was doing was that she was depositing small amounts into her bank account over 10 years and writing them off. So we have to know how to manage the 20% of our billing company that gives us 100% visibility across the board. Okay, flaw number 2, no forecasted collections. Guys, this is one of the most important aspects of your billing and collecting department, whether it's in-house or outsourced. There needs to be an accountability around what they say they're going to do. So what that means is, it's a very simple formula. I'm going to go over it in a little bit, but basically they tell you, if it's August, what September's collections should look like. In any other industry outside of healthcare, if you have any sort of collection company, there is always a projected amount of collected monies. The reason we don't do that in our space is because the healthcare system is so complicated that oftentimes it creates this like really scary scenario where if I'm going to put my reputation on the line and say I'm going to collect X number of dollars, well, that's a bold statement. That means I have to have major confidence I'm going to go get it. So when we have an in-house solution, oftentimes we don't do it because we just don't know. But you want to make sure that you're creating a projected forecasted collection for the next month, because forecasts shifts discussions from reactive to proactive. You know, when we look at our financial statements, when you look at your profits and loss statements, when you're looking at any sort of financial information, you have to remember that's retroactive. That's post-mortem. It's already happened. It's gone. When we're looking in our collections, we want to predict. We want to think forward and really get a grip of what we should be getting, because without that line of sight, we can't make decisions as business owners. So forecasting collections shifts the discussions with your billing team from being reactive to proactive, right? So in the cases, just that simple thing alone will make you money, will increase the amount of money you collect, because there's an inherent accountability between you and your service or company. That alone will increase your net collections, because every dollar collected from that point on is 100% profit. This is what it looks like. This is what we do for our clients, is that we show them, this is an actual graph of a recent client that we took on in the beginning of July. So the blue line is the projected collections, right? The forecasted collections. Forecasted collections is the previous month's visits times the average collection per visit statewide. There's a little indicator as well, a bonus bit of information, is that if your billing collection or service isn't pushing that number of dollars collected per visit up, like challenging the notion that they should be collecting more, that's another indication they might be cutting corners. So all we do is we take the previous month's visit, multiply it by the average number of collections per visit, and then we put that on the graph as a straight, we break it down week to week of what that number is per week, and that's that blue line. And then the actual collections are in red, right? So what's the answer to how do you manage that statistic? Very easy. You want 100% of forecasted collections collected every month. And if it's not 100%, you should already know in advance that that was coming and what the team is already doing about it. So when you forecast collections, I recommend that you do that in a meeting one time a month. We do them in 30 minutes because we're super efficient, but getting started, you want to plan on doing about 60 minutes a month. You want to review the previous month's performance. You want the story around the collection of what they're battling and what their plan is around it. And remember, if they're above what they're supposed to collect, you want to praise them. I have ideas and successful actions around bonus plans for your in-house solution. Feel free to reach out to me offline. And I can tell you ways that you can help incentivize your billing team, because ultimately all of us produce better when we're tied to the end result financially. And then you set the target for the following month. So that's the main piece I wanted to go over for forecasted collections. Flaw number 3, reviewing the wrong stats. Now, I did this a little tongue in cheek here because I have 3 very common collection statistics listed. These aren't the wrong stats, but oftentimes they're seen as the primary statistics that we use to measure the success of our billing and collecting success. What the problem with this is, and we're going to break them down one at a time, is that again, it's being reactive. What's being seen has already happened. So we're going to talk about how and what you look at to make corrections in your billing company in real time. So a lot of times we look at percent of collections, right? What is the percent of what we collected versus what we billed out? This number can vary wildly from state to state and from practice to practice. It's influenced by fee schedules, contracts, and just average reimbursements in certain regions. Alaska is going to have a completely different experience compared to New York. Total collections is the next stat we often look at as like how we manage a billing service. It's an important statistic for sure, but again, it's post-mortem. By the time we've seen what's been collected, it's too late in some cases to capture money that is now being subject to timely filing. So it's really important that we look at that from a place of putting a period at the end of the sentence and not as like the main measure of how your current company is doing, your solution. And of course, we look at collection per visit. It's also post-mortem. This is compounded by the contracts needing to network and determine regional averages. So again, this is a statistic that's important to know, but it's not the primary. So what are the important stats to look as the most primary statistics? Those are the accounts receivable. So we want to look at the aging AR report. Did I go up to? There we go. You always want to live month to month in this accounts receivable. We never get trained on this, so get ready for your 30-second training on what your accounts receivable should look like. So first you have, your accounts receivable aging from 0 to 60 days. You want the vast majority of all of your money out there in that block of time. You need 80% or greater of all of your outstanding collections to be found in that 0 to 60. Then the next 2 groups are very similar, 60 to 90 and 90 to 120. That's when we flip that expectation to now we want as little money as possible. So you should be seeing less than 5% of the total money outstanding in your 60 to 90 and your 90 to 120 days. And then lastly, the greater than 120 days, you want less than 10% of your total money outstanding. Now, I will tell you, we will take out liens and workman's comp cases from this situation because it could adversely affect it, but that alone should account for the majority of your payer mixes. So the right stats are allowing us to have the discussions in real time, because what happens is if one of my billers shows, let's say that they're greater than 120 is greater than 10% of the total outstanding, she tells the story. She needs to tell, not an excuse, I'm talking about the story, complete with objective data. Who, what, when, where. Here's the accounts that are outstanding. Here's why they're outstanding, and here's what I'm doing about it. Look how simple that is. It doesn't need to be more complicated than that. I don't need to hear all the details from my billers to get clear on if it's going right or not. Like I tell my billers, I just need to see the baby. I don't need to hear about the delivery. That's what matters to me, is the health of the child and not the process by which we got there, as long as things are going the way it needs to. So again, accounts receivable versus the other statistics allow us to look retroactively at, most statistics are a retroactive review versus the existing statistics we talked about. Your accounts receivable, your forecasted collections allow us to get into the weeds in the here and now and what matters most. So what are the benefits and the costs of understanding these fatal flaws and how to reverse them? Well, let's start with the benefits. First of all, you correct issues in real time, which increases your collections immediately. Remember, if we increased your average collection by $1 per visit, that is across all of your patients in a year, that money is net profit. It goes right into your pocket. So correcting issues in real time is a small thing, like compounding interest, that makes a big difference over time. It minimizes timely filing issues. It helps teams stay on their toes. When your billers and billing company know that you're looking at that specifically with expectation, they approach your account differently. Maximizing profitability. I threw the little cashier register sound in there as well. So here's what's at cost if we don't look at our billing and collecting departments from this way. Billers and company only go for the high-hanging fruit. They're going to go for the parts that you're not looking for in your company because you don't know how to measure. But now you do, don't you? You've got your accounts receivable aging. That will show up in the accounts receivable aging if they're only going for the low-hanging fruit. You'll have impaired cash flow. You will lose money. And when I say that, I mean lost profit. So how can I help you guys? I am blowing and going. It's 10:30. I left some time for some questions and answers. Most of you guys are ADD anyway, just like me. So I wanted to make this incredibly impactful and then really concise so that I can talk about any questions you have, any thoughts. Because again, my intention is to serve you, increase your profitability so you can increase your impact and your freedom. So first off, at no cost, I'm happy to do a profitability audit. If you have zero interest in like shopping around for an outsourced solution, like in the black, it doesn't matter. I love to do them. It helps me as well because I learn more about our industry in different states. So feel free to reach out to me after this if you'd love to do a no cost profitability breakthrough audit. It takes about 30 minutes of prep on your end. I would send you the list of data after we sign an NDA. I would send you the data that you need to compile, and it takes an hour discussion on the phone. It's incredibly efficient, and it will show you how your company is doing. More than once, I have said, your company is doing pretty good. You need to reward them. So remember, this isn't a technique to identify everything that's wrong. Almost always, it's more of a service to help people see what they could do to upgrade their existing solution. I also have a YouTube channel if you're interested. The Profitable PT is the name. I'm on YouTube. Feel free to reach out and watch videos. I constantly produce videos every week to help people figure those pieces out. Yeah, so I see Christina Panetta about interested in bonus ideas. Okay, what does it mean when actual is greater than projections? Okay, we've got a lot to talk about. Very cool. So, all right, let's go ahead and finish up the slideshow. Let me stop sharing. Get back on screen.
What needed to be done
Right.
to make it more useful, what we call smart testing.
Hey, Cindy.
And so,
Are you talking or to us, or is that background noise? We can't hear you very well.
I don't know what happened. Sorry.
Oh, no worries. All right. So yeah, so that was the presentation. I want you to be really clear that like the biggest thing to focus on is the mindset piece. We approach these things kind of like, you know, I wasn't trained on this, so I'm going to completely hand it over to an expert. That's a good move. I'm not ripping on that at all. I think there's a lot of value, which is why I started my business. But I will tell you, you still have to, ultimately it's your business. You have accountability of what's going on. Never let anyone completely take the reins. You need to know the 20% to manage them. And when you go to bed at night, you can be rest assured when you're managing these statistics, exactly where you should be, as long as everything continues to add up. Bill, did you have a question?
I have actually, I have a horror story.
Oh, I love those.
Okay. Look, anybody that knows me, they know that I've been crazy in my life, all my life, basically. I had 4 clinics. I had 2 hospitals. I was in the middle of finishing my dissertation, and I was going through the program at Rocky Mountain University, and my office manager stole $600,000.
Oh my gosh. Dude, how long did it take her to do that?
Took her 8 years, the reason why I'm telling people this is so many PTs get so involved. Oh, I've got to be with the patients, and I am with my patients all the time. I just don't. At 11 o'clock, I'm winding up with some. You've got to have your feet in the business part of your practice. There's lots of PTs that say, "Well, I just do the business part." I'm not that guy. there's lots of people that say, I just do the physical therapy. I'm not that guy anymore. I used to be. So be very leery. That's a lot of money. Guess what? She got 10 years probation and she's supposed to pay me $106 every month, which she's never paid me.
Oh my gosh.
So, and then also, I didn't do a background check on her. She had previous felonies. And so please, two things here. Once you stop getting paid, that's a signal. I went over a year without getting paid. Luckily, you know, I can live off of whatever, but once I found myself in a cardboard box on the side of the road, I said, you know, there's something wrong here. And I'm joking about that. But, and the second thing is do background checks on the people who handle money. And then also, if you feel like you can do drug tests, because she was also heavily medicated all the time. So those things, it was a nightmare. It really was. It was brutal.
Well, I really appreciate you sharing that, Bill. I think what I appreciate about you sharing that is that it really illustrates the main point about becoming comfortable in what we do. And it's, when I say comfortable, I realize that's not the right word, because you guys in this room in the lobby right now, there was way more people who registered for this than who are actually here. And I'll tell you what the story in my head is around this, because I've been a PT in private practice for 15 years, is that I have the intention of like, yeah, I need to learn more about that. That's a blind spot for me. And then the day comes, it's like, I really need to get back to treating my patients, or the time we spend in self-development and growth pays off in multiples. And this is like in your case, Bill, that was a beautiful illustration about protection, how we learn to protect ourselves from what we don't know. And so again,
exactly. In the whole 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, that's an amazing book. And amazing, if you ever get the lecture of it, that is where I really I lost my ability to sharpen the sword or sharpen the blade. I lost my ability to look at the, you know, what was happening. You know, my productivity versus production capability was all screwed up too. So just letting people know, I mean, I came through it, but I came through it because my production was so high. My production was huge. My production capability sucked. So I was blessed that my production was so high. But where would I be right now? What would I be able to do with that extra $600,000? You know?
Yeah, I have to say, Bill, if I can interject, what you said right there is so key, and I hope everyone's listening to this, is that is the solution we do in our industry in physical therapy more than any other healthcare industry. We solve it by doing more visits. We solve it by so our focus is new patients and total visits, because we're scared of what we don't know, and we don't have to be scared of that. That's why I decided to start what I'm doing now, because ultimately my mission is to help you increase that impact, your income and freedom the way that you intended to when you graduated and started becoming an entrepreneur. When we solve things by just piling on more new patients, what we end up doing is limiting our time away from not just things like this that teach you. I mean, in 30 minutes, I probably made you thousands of dollars if you just apply the simple principles we talked about. And if you don't understand what I was talking about, please reach out to me. I'm accessible. I talk to people every day across the country, and I just want to help. But ultimately, when we can find the ways to increase our efficiencies, we can bill and collect smarter. When we are smart enough to take on partnerships like my HODS partnership with Hands Eye Diagnostics, when we started doing ultrasound and EMGs, and we started working way smarter, it actually increased our ability to deliver care to our patients in addition to our income. If you need any direction on that, I don't know who she's supposed to talk to, who people need to talk to, maybe Diana or Dini, but either way, like, there are things we can do with our time that are going to make it to where we actually create more time around it. And my opinion is the first pillar of profitability is always your billing and collecting, because I don't typically meet with PTs who are struggling and being busy with patient care. You guys are awesome PTs. I promise that. I already know that. I don't even know you, and I know that. So let's get one of the 5 pillars of profitability. Number 1 is billing and collecting. And I need you to understand this. If you walk away with just this one thing in mind, you walk away, you just remember this one thing, it would have been worth your time. Profitability unlocks possibility. For me, I went from working so hard that I needed a pacemaker to being less than 10 hours a week in my company, selling it. In 2019, I moved to Europe with my family for 6 months and didn't work at all. I have 4 boys. We homeschooled them. We traveled around. We explored culture. That's what I'm talking about by increasing income, impact, and freedom. And then I came back and said, let's tackle where we are the most blind as an industry. So I'm getting questions in the chat room. I want to address those while we have time. Okay, so let's start here. At the top, what does it mean when the actual collections is greater than projections? Great question. Who asked that? Was that Demi? Yeah, so 2 things. This is the best case scenario. This is another reason why people don't like to project their collections, is because if it actually starts exceeding what they're projecting, that means you have to raise the expectation level. You go back to the formula is number of visits seen times the number of collection per visit. So you go back and let's say you're currently collecting $90 a visit. When you start exceeding that consistently, which is what we try to do in my company, it's what we've done. We just did it in a meeting this morning. We raised the bar by $5 per visit because we were so far above the projected. So then you raise it. You want that to be to the point where you find homeostasis around 100%. Yeah. Interested in bonus ideas, Christina Panetta says. Christina, can I qualify that? Are you talking about billers? Are you talking about everybody?
No, for the billing and collections.
Okay, so I can't go into too much specifics. Unlike physical therapy, where I can give you like a formula for PTs, because collections is such a varied experience from state to state, I'll give you a general answer, and then if you need to get with me offline, I'd love to talk to you about it. But essentially, the idea is that you want to compensate hourly at the expected market value. And when I recruit, I hired 8 billers last month. So I tell them this. By the way, I also tell them what it looks like if I fire them in the first meeting. That's a different meeting with James on HR. But when it comes to the bonus, we tell them, all right, look, like right now for a full cycle biller, $14 to $16 an hour, we're going to bring you on at 15. And if we can qualify you in the next 120 days, we're going to increase your income through a bonus. Now, the bonus structure is done in general terms as a team. So if you have in-house, obviously she's talking about an in-house solution. If you have an outsourced solution, you don't bonus them. You just send them cookies. Send us cookies. If we're doing a good job, send me something to eat. But your in-house team, you get everyone connected to that in a bonus structure. And here's where most bonuses go wrong, is they don't include the front desk. You see, 30% of all denials come from errors at your front desk, and they aren't seen as members of the billing team. They're seen as a separate entity, and they're offered managed that way. The direct reports aren't in the billing company, but you bonus the group as a whole. So there's a sub bonus for the front desk that's completely contingent upon the main variables they control, i.e. accurate data input, getting proper authorizations. If they make errors in either one of those areas, they're completely not getting a bonus, right? Then on the billing side, it's a percentage of what they're collecting, and it's based off of seniority and impact, because A to Z billing typically is done best in-house when you have multiple people working all aspects, payment posting, working denials, the AR, all that stuff. So typically they're wearing multiple hats, but you can qualify it by a multiplier. So you set a number that's going to be like, hey, because of how you show up, you're getting a multiple of 2 of that base number. And then every quarter, this is really important for bonuses in my opinion, and I've done some research on this. We did it in our company. Anything tied to accounts receivable, anything tied to billing, you want to bonus people a month out, or excuse me, a quarter out. So let's say Q1, they hit their targets all quarter long. They don't get paid that until the end of quarter 2. Why do we do that? Number one, cash flow. Billing and collecting through health insurance companies, we don't want the company to bear the difference in the burden of cash flow. So they hit their markers, they're still collecting on Q1's performance over the next subsequent months. So you pay them at the end of Q2. The other reason I love to do that is it creates like this never ending retention. Why would I quit and not work out my issues unless I really wasn't wanting that second bonus? So with bonus, and when you start throwing that kind of structure around when you're recruiting, that's when you get the cream of the crop of billers. I have been absolutely surprised about how amazingly ethical most billers are that I've come across. Like, there's a lot of billers who are just looking for this kind of leadership. They want the forecasted collections because they want to show you what they're doing. When we don't ask to measure that, they fall asleep at the wheel. And that's when sometimes it's not as easy to go for the high-hanging fruit because no one cares anyway, right? So I hope that answers your question. We can get offline if you'd like some more information on that. I'm interested in, okay, how do you incentivize employees? Is that the same thing, Cindy, that you were talking about? Or is there a different question on different types of employees?
It's the same thing, but if you want to share the physical therapy,
Yeah.
since you went over the billing.
Yeah. So physical therapists, there's different ways to incentivize them. I'm a big believer in the more simple and measurable a bonus is, the easier it will take and the more impact it has on our team. So I've seen various bonuses. My favorite version of the bonus was based off of a production metric of visits per week. So I had to know in advance like what that number was that was profitable. It's different from state to state. Arizona on average is 60 visits a week. New York is higher. In Alaska, they're freaking out when they're hitting 40 visits a week. Like, it just depends on where you are. So you get that visit per week number, and then you determine when the company is making profitability. So let me use Arizona as an example. This is exactly what we did. If you were a physical therapist in Arizona, your minimum expectation was 60. And if you were below that, you reported what you were going to do to get that number up. And if you were down below that for any period of time, there was a report done. And there were some meetings with leaders to help you. Once you hit 70 visits a week, you kicked into bonus range. So don't let the numbers like polarize you, because that might be really high or low for where you are. But the important thing is, for us, we knew at 70 visits per week, our profit margin was above 20%. Industry average for physical therapy outpatient practices, 8% profit margins. 10% is breaking even in today's standards because you need at least that growth to account for inflation and incredible like inefficiencies in healthcare. So you shoot for 15 as a starting point, but once we hit 20%, then we bonus. So from 70 to 78 visits per week, we increase their pay by $1 per hour for that 2-week period in that pay period. And so it was like, if I did 71 visits, that would be a total of another $80. If I did 2, that's 160. If I did 73 visits, so on and so forth. PTs who used to complain in our busier season would find themselves like fighting each other for patients because they knew they were only a couple visits shy of increasing their take home by $300 to $400 in a 2-week period. That equates to about 10 to 20 grand a year if they're consistently in the higher end of their bonus range and never got a complaint after we instilled that bonus. All right.
Will.
Yeah.
It would be great, perhaps now it's a little late, but it would be great perhaps in one of your next upcoming Coffee with Will presentations to talk a little bit about the new announcement from Medicare that they are finally going forward with a de facto 9% decrease across the board for physical therapy codes, and that does not include the potential 15% decrease with the codes for, with the PTA codes. And see, okay, what could be some strategies to mitigate that. I know that definitely many of the people, including us, we are utilizing diagnostics to mitigate that decrease. but if there are any other strategies also, because if you think about this, I was reading on Gawenda's website, Rick Gawenda's website, and he was indicating that he estimates that the overall decrease will be about 20%. That is the estimate that he puts out there. So I'm kind of thinking out loud that if you have, let's say, you see Medicare patients and you see them for 10, 12 visits, and let's say that you make, I don't know, let's say that you make $100 per visit for each Medicare patient, then you're talking about 1,000 to 1,200 revenue just from PT, 20% less on that, then that will drop at $800 revenue per visit. So you go from $100 a visit to $80 a visit for Medicare. And my thought, and that's what we're kind of calculating from our side, is that if we make, let's say, for every Medicare patient that we do an EMG or an ultrasound, let's say EMG study only, and I don't know, Bill, what is your Medicare there reimbursement, but from our side, we're making in New York from NGS Medicare services, we average about $500 from Medicare. And this is an average, taking the low codes and the high codes. If I say that I have a patient, let's say, that goes from $1,000 down to $800, right? Because of that 20% the reduction. If I decide to do an EMG test on that patient that will yield to me another $500, then I go, instead of $800 for that patient, I go to $1,300. Meanwhile, the cost for me to procure this additional $500 was just one visit. You see? So, but besides this strategy, we should start fathoming other strategies to go about mitigating the Medicare reduction. Because that will be a snowball. It can go to other insurance companies also.
Yeah, I love it. And it's so much my ultimate mission here is that, you know, going with that concept of profitability unlocks possibility. The only main strategy that PTs typically share, and there's no judgment on this, this was me until I needed a pacemaker, was just to increase our visits. Well, if we keep playing the same game as Medicare changes the rules of the game, we're going to find ourselves in a worse position. And I'll tell you where we're going to feel it. We're going to feel it first and foremost with profits. What does that mean? Less time at home. Less time like working on ourselves, whether that's exercise, whether that's being with our family. And I'm not even being heavy-handed. I'm being like literal in this, is that we have to pivot how we increase our profitability. That's the only answer. Now there's lots of ways to increase profitability, making sure that I've termed it the 5 pillars of profitability. Dimi is talking about diversification, which what I love about what Dimi talks about with HODS, and we've been with HODS for 8 years and we've made, well, don't take this like anything other than what it is, just a fact for measure, is that we've made hundreds of thousands of profit off of that relationship that like we would have never had because of what he talked about. One patient in terms of revenue turned into X amount of PT dollars because we were running our billing a certain way, and because we were running some of these other pillars of profitability, we were getting $3 to $4 extra dollars per visit out of that. But then you add these supplemental ideas like HODS, and it's a total game changer around that. So we have to change the game we play if we're going to pivot. And it's okay if we don't know what to do. Like, I don't want you to like beat yourself up, because you wouldn't be in this room unless you were a fraction of a % of the most successful PTs in our industry. Right now, while you're here, there's tens of thousands of PTs that are so overwhelmed and overworked right now that they wouldn't even consider the option to even be in a room like this. So give yourself lots of kudos that you're in that %. People like Dimi, people like me are here to serve and give you what you need to be successful. You know, how did I figure it out, by the way? I literally paid people hundreds of thousands of dollars, consultants, coaches. I didn't know how to do any of this stuff. So what I'm doing here and what I'm doing in my YouTube channel is I'm giving that information away. Like, I'm giving away like what I've learned, the 20% that I learned that can make the 80% of impact in your business. And yeah, I have a billing company. That's how I pay the bills. And I can promise you, with my monthly coaching calls, in addition to the clients that we've had, we're going to change their worlds forever, because profitability unlocks possibility. So I can serve lots of people. I can only help a select few who are willing to go deep. And I would say that's true for HODS and other companies like that, is that they're going to produce content. Just go start with the free content. Go learn what you can. It may or may not align for you, for example, to work within the Black or some of these other companies. But if it does align, you can dramatically increase your impact. And guys, I just want to thank you guys. It's been absolutely a pleasure to be here. Let me make sure there's no other questions. Oh yeah, I didn't show this at the beginning. This is coffee with Will. I don't drink coffee, and so there's nothing in here, but I can tell you that I am really honored to be a part of this. Like, if you're here, just remember what you're doing is investing in yourself, and there's no greater investment you can make, because what you're doing is making an impact. So for next week, Nathan's not here, so I'll promote him. This is my business partner for all those years. Nathan Shields lives in Alaska. He's an electrodiagnostician, not an electrician. He's very talented. And his next week, Coffee with Nathan, will be worth attending. So do what you can to really clear in these meetings. Clear. If you can't be here without multitasking, great. But if you can be here without multitasking, you're going to increase your impact, guys. That's all I got.